This simple thinking system has won me more than 1,000 games, as well as helped my students to finally achieve their goals. I'm gonna share with you exactly what you need to think at every stage of the game. Starting with the opening. We are gonna play against Francis here, 2300 rated chess.com bot, and I recommend you this Collie Zuckertort system for white. First of all, you have to understand you don't need to memorize a lot in chess at your level. It's just a waste of your time, energy, and it's not gonna really help you become a better chess player, which is my main goal on this channel. Instead, you want to have one opening that you understand really well, both for white and for black. Just one. Start with it. Go deep instead of go wide and learn a bit of everything or a bit of nothing. So the Collie Zuckertort system, I like it so much because it's easy to execute against any opponent. As long as they play d5 at some point, it works perfectly. So we fight for the center, we start with d4, then we play knight f3, and now we make the move e3. We want to develop our bishop to d3 and the second one to b2, where we are gonna attack. Obviously, there are different ways our opponent can play. They can bring this bishop out, they can leave it there, and yeah, we have to be flexible a little bit, but you know, chess is pretty tough. Yet, we can still follow this system. Don't be afraid of this bishop on f5. We can still play bishop d3 and offer this exchange. Or, yeah, they can refuse it with e6. Again, doesn't really matter. I don't want you to focus too much on the specific opening moves. Instead, you should focus on the key principles. Fighting for the center, bringing all of your pieces into the game as fast as possible, as well as make sure that your king is secure. I think, yeah, let's just do that. That would be very instructive. Doesn't matter what our opponent is doing, we try to execute the same plan. Of course, you have to take into account the moves that your opponent is making. Because, for example, here he is taking my bishop. I cannot just say, well, bishop b2 is the next step of my plan, so let me just do that. No, whenever your opponent makes a move, check what kind of threat he has created. Don't assume he is an idiot. Always think the best of your opponent, what he can do. And yeah, how can it be dangerous for you? For example, he just took my bishop. I cannot ignore it. I have to take it back. If you want to learn more about the Collie Zuckertort system, how you can crush anyone with this exact opening, I have made an entire course based on this opening. It's a full holistic opening repertoire, both for white and black. The link is in the description. Please check it out. I play bishop b2. Yes, my bishop is no longer there. It's going to be more difficult for me to execute my plan, but it stays the same. I want to attack, and the first step for that attack is to place my knight to d5. But first, I want to finish my development. Every single minor piece should be developed, and then it's time for the major pieces, the queen and the rooks. So here I have a choice. I can continue my development with the rooks, but instead I want to make this exception. Only push your piece twice that has already been developed in the game if you have a very good reason. In this case, I do. Because the knight is tremendously active in the center, and it's the key idea of the entire Collie Zuckertort system. So I want you to remember it and always try to execute. All right, my opponent plays bishop b4, which seems like a positional threat. I, as always, think what is the threat, and I'm thinking that if I play f4, which is a logical next step of our plan, he wants to take on d2, just exchange it, and then play knight to e4. And the knight on e4 is really great for him if I cannot exchange it. So I want just to play c3. Don't worry that it's going to block our bishop. We can always play c4 and open it up again. But that is going to attack this bishop, push it back. And now we can safely play this f4 move, the next move in our plan. And the e4 square is still well protected. The knight cannot go there. We are going to just take. Now, the opening is over. How do we transition into the middle game? This is one of the most difficult parts for the chess players, and that is what's stopping you from finally achieving your goal. we have to come up with a strategic plan. One idea that we are going to focus on. Once you do that, you don't waste any time. Every single move you make, you try to go one step closer to achieving that goal. How do you come up with the right plan? Well, first of all, if you understand your opponent very well, like this Colli-Zuckertor system, it's easy for you. You already know your plan is to give a checkmate and you have to play on the king side. If, however, you play something that you are not that familiar with, or if your opponent is doing something very weird and you have no idea how you got into that position, you just have to think about the strengths of your position. For example, we are much stronger on the king side, and the weaknesses of your opponent. And you want to try to combine that together and figure out the plan based on that. For example, attacking that king because it's vulnerable, he doesn't have a lot of defenders. And based on that, you think about your direct moves. The moves, just your steps towards executing that goal. And we keep an eye on the plan of our opponent, because he is stronger on the queen side, typically in this opening, and tries to create some counterplay. Although we don't have any king here, so it's much less dangerous. That is why I love this opening so much. We are really playing for the checkmate. We are attacking. We are so active. One way to continue the attack is g4, g5, grabbing more space and kicking this knight away. Another way is to start with rook to f3 and rook h3, because then we are going to keep an eye on that h7 pawn and, well, can start pushing the pawn later on. That's what I want to do. I want to bring more pieces into my attack. I still do not see any real counterplay for my opponent. Yes, he's trying to create it with the move c5, but look at how stable our position is. We are not afraid of anything whatsoever. So I want just to continue my plan, rook h3. Now we are ready for the moves g4 and g5. It looks very simple, and sometimes it is. Obviously, your opponent would do his best to stop you, but it's difficult. I mean, he's a real human being. Imagine that. Your opponent is coming, creating those checkmating ideas. It's tough to handle all of that. All right, he plays h5, which stops the move g4. But at the same time, well, it weakens the king somewhat. g6, for example, would not be that easy. I'm going to just take it. Again, first of all, I don't want to do anything special. I want to finish my development. The more pieces I can bring into the attack, the better it gets. You don't want to go crazy. You don't want to go all in and just try to destroy your opponent immediately. No, instead, try to be consistent, try to be reasonable, and create as many problems for your opponent as possible while improving your position. For example, I can even bring my second rook to the g3 square and keep an eye on that king. The more pieces I bring, the more complicated it's going to get. My opponent still cannot play b5, which would be a logical step for him because of knight c6 fork, so I think I have time for that. Let's try it. You might be wondering, what is this magic board I use in my videos? It's called Chess Not Evo, and I enjoy it so much. I have it for a year now. It completely transformed the way I play chess and I train chess, because I can play both on Chess and chess.com online, but on a real board. It's a completely different experience, and I enjoy it a lot. I haven't had any major issues, and that's my favorite product from Chessnut, because I have everything in one place. I have my books here, I have my studies here, I have my games, but they have so many different products according to your needs and your budget. The best part is, of course, you can use the link in the description as well as the promo code journeytograndmaster to get a big discount on all Chessnut products. Now, back to video. Usually, it's not that simple to execute all of that, but I don't see any reason why we can't, so let's go for it. All right, our opponent understands his mistake and finally puts the rook to the right square. We can, of course, play c4. This is quite a logical plan, because sometimes this bishop, which seems to be very passive, actually plays the main role. Suddenly we jump with the knight, we take the c5 pawn, and the bishop is completely opened and actually plays the key role. We, for example, just sacrifice it on the g7 square and deliver the checkmate. We can do that immediately, play c4, or just start with the move rook to g3 first. I like both of the moves, to be honest. I don't see any problem. So let's prepare fully. See what our opponent is doing. Right now, he cannot play c4. We can just take it. So he plays b5. But now it's basically time. We can even just already take on d7, take on c5, and play c4. I think I don't see any problem with that plan. So first we take here. All we want to do is just free up this diagonal. Once this monster awakes, we are going to destroy our opponent. He has to take with the queen. Otherwise, this h5 pawn is hanging. Right. Next step. We take this pawn on c5. It's again a move with the tempo. Notice that every single move I try to create a new threat for my opponent. This is the best strategy in chess that's gonna bring you so many victories and elo points when you create a new threat with every single move for your opponent. But please don't play hope chess when you play a ridiculous move for yourself just with the purpose of creating that threat. Instead, you want to combine doing something useful for yourself. Let me first think about the threats, because yeah, my queen might be hanging in some variations, but actually I might even sacrifice my queen because really this checkmate is coming. Those rooks are perfectly placed to destroy my opponent. He plays e5, trying to stop that, but actually I can just take it and again make my bishop as strong as possible. The alternative was to take with the pawn, also more than reasonable. I just don't want to shut down my own bishop. Yeah, and here this moment comes. I think I can just sacrifice my queen. But maybe I'm too optimistic. Let's think. Bishop takes f6. If he takes my queen, I have rook takes g7, check, only move king to h8, and then rook takes h5, checkmate. But you always want to think about all possible scenarios, all active opportunities for your opponent. Please remember this CCT system: checks, captures, and threats. You use it both to find your opportunities as well as your opponents. So here is how you find the best move in chess. The entire system that I use in my games to outplay grandmasters that has helped my students so much. Your opponent makes a move. Step 1, you think, what is the threat he created for you? Well, he's attacking the queen. It doesn't mean that you must react to that. First, you think about the most active moves for yourself, which are checks, captures, and threats. Rook takes g7 is the only check, so you can start thinking about it right now. By the way, it actually makes some sense. King takes, then we have another check, rook g3. On the second move of the variation, you again start with the same system, again checks, captures, and threats. Don't forget about that. But he has king h6, and I mean, doesn't seem like I'm delivering the checkmate, and then why do I need to sacrifice that much? Okay, it doesn't work. Step number 2, captures. Bishop takes f6 is the best capture I have here, because you always start with the biggest one, the queen, the rooks, the bishop, then the knight. We cannot do those, but we can take the knight. Again, we calculate the variation. The most active move for my opponent is to grab my queen, but then we have this checkmate. All right, it's not over. He can take my queen, but also he can take my rook on h3. And that is also important, because if I just take it back, now he can take my queen, and after rook g7, I don't have that rook to deliver a checkmate. I continue that variation by thinking about my opportunities, and first of all, checks, and I have there rook takes g7, king goes to the corner, and queen h7, checkmate. That is why I think that bishop takes f6 is working for me, but not because I just guessed it, because I calculated it based on the most active opportunities, both for me and my opponent. Next step, I again think, what is the most active move for me? He played g6, my queen is still hanging. Don't forget about that. Don't just, of course, first of all, you look at your opponent's move and ask yourself, what is the threat behind that move? But second, you think maybe there are any more threats on the board that are not directly connected to the last move. And you remember, the queen is still hanging. I noticed this mistake so much. Like, people have protected tactically somehow in the previous move, and next move they completely forget about it. No, always think, can my opponent give me a check? Can my opponent capture something? At least those 2 questions would already save you from 90% of all of the mistakes you make in chess. All right, we continue with the most active opportunities. I have 2 interesting ideas here. Rook takes g6. is the most active move, the only reasonable check we can make, and it seems to win, because if he takes back, I have queen takes g6, and the king has no moves to go. He has to play queen to g7, and then we just take it. And after rook takes g6, if he goes away with king to h7, we can just play rook takes h5, and again, that is a checkmate. So basically, because we started with a check, we find this best opportunity for ourselves. This is why it's so essential. If you don't do that, you miss so many chances in your own games. If you start with just taking this pawn on c4, you're very passive. You're in the reactive mode. You react to what your opponent is doing instead of being in the driver's seat and dictate the terms. So yeah, that move, rook takes g6, seems to be the move. I have calculated the variations. My opponent cannot really refuse it. So I'm finally sacrificing my rook and deliver a checkmate. This is how this Colli-Zukertort system helps you to outplay anyone and just to destroy your opponent without wasting too much time. You know the plan, so you can execute it fast, and you know what to do in the middle game. And in this playlist, I share with you absolutely everything you need to know about this opening to crush anyone under 2000 elo.